we in India will have to start investing in research. Take, for example, quantum computing. We talk about it because of the fundamental research that was done almost 100 years back by Niels Bohr and other people, and now it's coming to fruition.
How does he or she invest in research within his or her own limited sphere of influence?
The next revolution has to be in manufacturing. If you look at the services industry, there's technology that's available. Anyone who's got a computer or a computing resource can very effectively deliver services. Can we deliver the same experience, same technology to a person on the shop floor? Let's start investing in capital goods manufacturing so that downstream impact or downstream effect will be felt over the next 1 or 2 decades. For us in India, it is so good because for all the younger generation, the future is going to be so much better than what we have experienced in the past that there is no need for them to look back at all. Just keep looking ahead. And that energy of what have I done lately? What is the new thing that I want to do? Learn something. At the end of the day, ask yourself the question, what is it that I've learned today? What can be more challenging than what I did today? Just these 2 questions will keep you energized.
Very good morning, afternoon or evening, depending on when you're watching, to yet another edition of the Bulletproof Business Podcast. We have with us today a very, very special guest, Mr. Lakshmi Narayanan, CEO and co-founder of Cognizant. The company Cognizant, of course, needs no introduction. One of the pioneering movements, the leaders of the Indian IT revolution, the creator of millions of jobs, direct and indirect, and a company that created enormous ripple effects, positive ripple effects for the economy. We have with us today the creator of that revolution, the co-founder of the company, and one of the best strategic minds in India, both in terms of information technology and business. So, sir, very, very warm welcome, and thank you so much for taking out the time.
Thank you. Thank you for having this conversation with me.
It's a pleasure, sir. And today what we want to do is to really focus on bringing your wisdom and experience to, I would say, millions of young entrepreneurs who are looking at building businesses of their own, who have either already started or who are in the growth phase, which is, as you know, a very painful phase, a scale-up phase for the business. And I want to touch upon some aspects of what's happening in the larger macroeconomic context of AI and how that is changing what quote-unquote jobs mean and what the future of the economy is going to look like for modern job creators. Right? What does that mean in terms of how many people do we employ versus how much technology do we deploy, capital allocation for people versus technology? Those are some of the questions we are going to talk about. So I want to take you right back to the beginning when we start. And assuming you were starting building Cognizant today. For those of you who don't know, I'll give you a 1-minute context. Lakshmi Narayanan sir pioneered the concept of execution at scale with quality, which is something that the Indian IT revolution became known for. High quality execution at scale. How does that look different to you today, sir, in the context of the AI revolution?
First of all, Cognizant has been a great story. It was built by literally thousands of people who came through the doors, highly educated people, highly motivated. One of the key things that we did right at the beginning was to share with every single employee of that company, including the doorman, what the vision of that company is, what is it that we are trying to do, so that they all were rowing in the same direction. The people power is essentially what built that company. Now, in terms of how things are today, I would say things are far better than it was when we started about 25 years back. The reason why I say that is technology has advanced enormously, and for people in the services industry who rely so much on technology, it's a fantastic time to deliver an experience to the customers that is far, far better than what could have been delivered or what could have even been imagined about 15 or 20 years back. So to that extent, technology, including the AI technologies, are a fantastic and welcome change for the services industry. And of course, they're going to impact manufacturing also. That's something that we will talk about. The other thing that I want to mention is we used to have a lot of emphasis on training and education as far as getting people into the industry is concerned. Now today, the crop of people who are coming out of schools and colleges are such great self-learners that the amount of time that services industry spends on training and educating the people has shrunk. One, due to the online nature of the training that is available, the skill building, and two, the enthusiasm and the motivation that these people have, because the way training or knowledge is imparted in a gamified manner in many instances is something that young adults love and they get motivated by that. So just these two factors alone contribute to increased productivity, improved motivation and commitment and enthusiasm on the part of people coming into the industry. It's that same enthusiasm, motivation that is charging some of the people into entrepreneurship. They realize that there is so much that I can learn, and I can learn as much as I need, whenever I need, in the quantum that I need, that encourages them to build new businesses, to think of new ideas, and not be afraid of, do I know enough to start an industry, start a company in this particular area? The confidence that they get is, no, I may not know enough, but then there is enough to learn, there is enough opportunity that's available for me to access knowledge, access talent, so I'm going to get started. That confidence is something that's helping the entrepreneurship in this country today.
That's very well put, sir. But if I have to ask you a slightly different, the same question in a slightly different way, I think the past of India, and when you built Cognizant, certainly, what you were looking for was solving problems, global problems, in the sense solving the problems of the West, right? Where they needed solutions for technological problems they were facing. But I think where the world is shifting towards is innovating and solving for basically creating intellectual property, which may not have been a focus of the IT industry 25, 30 years ago. If you were advising a young entrepreneur today, or if you were building Cognizant yourself today, would there be any shift in focus towards creating IP versus solving problems of the status quo?
Absolutely. There'll clearly be a shift, and that's a shift that we already see happening. If you look back at the IT services industry, when we were solving problems for our customers in the West, the type of problems that emanated were in their application of newer ideas, innovative ideas, and more importantly, new technologies. So there is an invention engine that was driving the growth of, let's say, US. More US, a little to some lesser extent Europe. The invention leads to innovation. When it has to be applied in the industrial or the consumer context, you have to build solutions for that. So we were essentially partnering with our customers to translate the new inventions that were happening in technology, coming up with innovating ideas and diffusing it to the people, essentially to, scale it up across multiple people. But the original invention is something that we in India were very weak at. But the US particularly was very, very strong because of the emphasis on research. All the new ideas, products, technologies will come either from Seattle or from Stanford. That belt. And the moment that invention happens, the consumers or the big corporates or the enterprises were eager to implement that, leverage that for the benefit of their businesses. That's a problem that we are solving. But now it is increasingly desirable. In fact, it is a requirement that we become inventors too, which means we in India will have to start investing in research. The products that were built, take for example, quantum computing. We talk about it because of the fundamental research that was done almost 100 years back. by Niels Bohr and other people, and now it's coming to fruition. So it's even in those areas of fundamental science education and research is something that we have to start investing aggressively in order to gain not necessarily a lead over all the other people, but to innovate and invent things that are appropriate for the Indian context. That is something that is very, very essential. We already started doing it in some areas. For example, in terms of vaccine development, we are a tropical country, and nobody in the West is looking at the problems of tropical countries and the special situation that we face here. So we have started. There are startups that are relying so much on inventions that have happened in education institutions. There are at least half a dozen examples of people working on vaccine development out of research that happened in Indian Institute of Science. So that's the change that is happening. And it's not limited only to science. It has to be in the areas of economics, psychology, law, whichever area that you take. Investment in fundamental research is something that is going to lead to innovation and diffusion in the next few decades.
You spoke a lot about research, sir, and if you were to bring that down to a small business owner, how does he or she invest in research within his or her own limited sphere of influence?
Yeah.
And please, sir.
Yeah, I mean, a small firm, immaterial to the size of the firm, the first thing that I would encourage all entrepreneurs to do is to keep track of whatever is happening in the area of research, published papers, inventions that are published, which is extremely important. You may not be in a position to leverage it immediately, but to know what's happening is very important. In the area of open innovation now, if there is a paper published in Nature, any other magazines, Nature, Science, or in legal journals, it is immediately available globally to everyone. So to keep abreast of what's happening is very, very important. Earlier, it used to be a challenge to subscribe to these journals. It was limited. But in today's age, any new invention is accessible to all the nations of the world immediately. So to keep track of that and to see how it is going to be relevant or how it can be leveraged to improve or innovate my business is one important thing. And it's also those ideas, those papers that get published that generate new ideas. So the people reading it will say, hey, this is maybe the European context. In our context, we have a different type of a challenge. Can I transpose some of the ideas that are there in this paper to our context and create a new idea? So this constant work is something that all major enterprises, of course, have invested in. Mid-sized enterprises also will have to start doing it. Have a small team to begin with who are, imagining, blue sky imagination, looking at all these papers, coming up with ideas. They may not come up with an idea every day, but then the work that they do will definitely deliver results over a period of time. If you're a 100-member company, to have a 5 or 6 people who are specialists, who keep constantly track of whatever is happening, what is the state of the art, is the most important thing for any company to remain innovative.
So I have a two-part question going forward. So we have seen a lot of Indian businesses, young small businesses are typically service-oriented today. But as far as the manufacturing revolution is concerned, many would say they're still lagging behind. A lot of Indian entrepreneurs, though, want to get into manufacturing. But there are some strategic or I would say logistical hurdles which are holding them back, or financial hurdles, capital hurdles. Two-part question. One, what do you see are the reasons why Indian manufacturing is not able to replicate the success of China maybe a few decades ago? And two, what are the words of advice you would share for Indian manufacturing entrepreneurs or business builders who are looking at scaling their manufacturing setup? What are your words of advice to them? How do they, in some sense, circumvent some of these challenges? And what is the path ahead for them?
Yeah, I mean, the next revolution has to be in manufacturing. If you look at the services industry, there's technology that's available. Anyone who's got a computer or a computing resource can very effectively deliver services. Can we deliver the same experience, same technology to a person on the shop floor? Can there be, it could be humanoids, it could be robots, it could be robotic-based automation, etc. So that's the next revolution that's waiting to happen, and that's already begun to happen. One of the biggest problems that we have, or if we look at China, the capital equipment manufacturing is a very well-developed industry. If I have to make a battery pack out of cells that I import, there is a machinery that's available. I don't have that machinery here in India. That equipment is not being manufactured, that has to be imported. If I have that, I can make 100,000 of batteries in a month. I can build scale, but we don't have that capital equipment. We have not invested in that capital equipment industry. So that's the biggest problem. The challenge, of course, is that is very, very capital intensive industry. Building a robotic line for automation is something that is very expensive. Only now the auto industry seems to have, to some extent, gained the strength in investing in platforms for different models of vehicles. So robotic manufacture is something that they do. But if you look at common household items, a pressure cooker being manufactured, it's still predominantly labor intensive. That is something that can be automated. With automation, you'll get scale, prices will come down, and so on. So my thought process here is to say that let's start investing in capital goods manufacturing so that downstream impact or downstream effect will be felt over the next 1 or 2 decades.
Great, sir. So the second part of the question was for entrepreneurs who are looking at starting something in manufacturing. Many of them may have had family members who had small shops or small workshops in tier 2, tier 3 cities. They may have migrated to a place like Chennai or Bangalore. They want to set up a small plant. In their mind, there are constraints all around. There are constraints of capital, constraints of what products to launch, constraints of going to market. Of course, some aspects are made much easier by the proliferation of e-commerce and quick commerce, so they have easier access to end customers. So that problem is to some extent dissipated, but the other problems still exist. In fact, they are even more intensive. The cost of capital is nothing less than 10-12% today, no matter whom you go to. Right? So how would you advise them if you were starting a business in that space today? What would be some of the steps you would take early on to shield the business against future headwinds?
That's an interesting question in terms of manufacturing or producing goods. One, of course, is most of the young entrepreneurs today are talking about import substitution or replacement. We are importing it. What is it that we can do? I'll give you one example. People in the Bombay Shaving Cream Company. Gillette has a global monopoly as far as both shaving products are concerned. There isn't a good Gillette-like razor that's coming up. Bulk of it is imported. The price point at which it is sold is very high. These are considered almost luxury goods, but the margins are good. It's attractive for people to invest. So a company like Bombay Shaving Cream started with the shaving creams, and now they are looking to innovate in the area of razors. That's a new way, and when they are doing it, the fundamental thing that they have to focus on, which I'm sure they will be, is designed to a price. Earlier you bring out a product at a particular price point. As the scale improves, we come down the cost curve, and over a period of time, the cost becomes affordable. That's no longer true. At the time of introduction, it has to be at the right price point. So designing to a price, designing to a cost is extremely important, and there are tools that are available to measure and see the viability of projects and products. So that's clearly one. The point that you made about selling has become relatively easy thanks to all the technology that is available there. The product ideas are also relatively easy. People are able to conjure up those type of things. But the complexity is in terms of designing to cost. How do I do it? The moment you start importing, then you have a problem in terms of equipment. So that is one challenge that the entrepreneurs will have to really face. But that is also something that I wouldn't worry too much about. The complexity is in terms of, in India specifically, the regulations. I mean, this is a simple case of that Bira 91, a company that promoted in India, manufacture beer, 500 crore plus company, fantastic turnover. In order for them to move to an IPO situation, they had to just make a small change in the name of the company. They were a company, Beverages Private Limited. They just had to drop that Private Limited and keep the name. So which they applied, got the permission. And the moment the name of the company changed and all the products that they sold carried the new name, every single state had to get new approval from the state government, from the authorities, to say that, oh, this is a different company. And they treated every one of these things as a different company. They lost 4 to 5 months in the process. Sales slumped. Okay. Now they're in a position to pick it up. So these are the two challenges that most entrepreneurs have. Although we say it is easier to do business, it is still not easy for entrepreneurs because of some of these regulatory concerns and not all the people being aligned with promoting growth. If everyone thinks that, yes, I trust the people, this is such a simple thing, I will give the approval immediately, that kind of a mindset doesn't come, entrepreneurs will continue to face those type of challenges. The other challenge that I mentioned in terms of manufacturing, capital, equipment, import, etc., once you design to a particular cost and price, then that can be relatively easily solved.
So the next question is going to be slightly different, and it's about mindset. So for the India of the future, a country which is aspiring to be, which is poised to be a global leader, how do we change our mindset to think very big and execute very big dreams on a day-to-day basis? And the second part to my question is, a lot of us have a survival legacy built in, which means that we have been trained to just do the right actions to survive. And there's a big difference between a mindset which gets you to survive, almost cockroach-like, to a mindset which allows you to execute very big projects where there is an inherent risk, where there is also an inherent being out of your comfort zone situation, which is something anathemic, which is very anathemic to a person geared towards survival. So as a society, there is a DNA imprint almost where we are geared towards survival, and it has helped us. It has helped us all these decades. But now the next phase of our growth has to be towards thriving, towards world domination. And for that, we will need to shift mindsets and change our internal composition, our internal DNA almost. How does one make that shift? It's a very long question for such a small conversation. But if you want to give our viewers a few steps on how you were able to break out of survival mindsets and focus on day-to-day habits that created growth and thriving, that will be very helpful.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very interesting question and a very important question for the younger generation to remain innovative. This is a lesson that I learned from, Clayton Christensen, best known Harvard professor for his ideas and innovation. So he would always talk about the future. For example, he's saying, if you've done something successfully finished, it's over, done and dusted. Ask yourself the question, what have you done lately? You cannot enjoy the glory of having done something in the past for the rest of your life. Okay? That's over. You've been recognized, you've been rewarded, you've been felicitated. That's done. Ask yourself the question, what is it that you want to do in the future? In fact, one of the things that I always remember him saying is, why do you want to be known as an ex-CEO? The ex-business is gone. Do something new. Even if you're an ordinary manager and employee, if you're doing something new, that that should be your aspiration. That is what you should feel proud about rather than what you have achieved in the past. That creates that innovative mindset. So that is something that, this is applicable to all the young minds and all the people who have retired. My main mentor, F.C. Kohli of Tata Consultancy Services, always used to say, there's nothing like retirement for people. You're a professional. Maybe your responsibilities are very huge at the time you retire. Your responsibilities will start coming down, but you're not giving up anything. You're creating something. You're creating greater impact. Okay, just keep measuring what you're doing, and if it is better than what you have done in the past, that means you're progressing. You're needed for society. So that is one mindset that we would require across the board. The second mindset is to always look ahead and look at the future, not keep looking at the past all the time. Giving examples from the past, etc., learnings from the past, yes, very important. But to be dragged or pulled back from your aspirations based on some failures of the past is not a good thing. So look ahead, because the context is so different today. In a particular context, in the past things may have failed, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the same thing attempted now will fail, because the context is different, the ideas are different, what's available is different. So if you have this type of a looking at the future mindset, and for us in India, it is so good, because for all the younger generation, the future is going to be so much better than what we have experienced in the past, that there is no need for them to look back at all. Just keep looking ahead, and that energy of what have I done lately, what is the new thing that I want to do, learn something. At the end of the day, ask yourself the question, what is it that I've learned today? At the end of the day, asking what can be more challenging than what I did today. Just these two questions will keep you energized.
That's the last question for today, but would encourage all of you to not just like and subscribe, would love for you to do that, but would like for all of you to ask questions in the comments below as well. And we will try to get all those questions sent over to Lakshmi Narayanan sir, and if possible, if his time permits, maybe do a follow-on interview of this as well with him. But my last question for today's conversation, sir, is what was, when you came to office and you were, I'm sure, faced, or even today, when you come to office and you're faced with so many challenges, what did you tell yourself? What was the subconscious conditioning to yourself that allowed you to think big in the face of challenges? And what should the viewers watching today do different when they are faced, like you said, failure has an imprint. Your past failures imprint upon you a sense of weakness and prevent you from doing big stuff in the future. Apart from that, the challenges of today imprint upon you and have an imprint. So how did you, on a day-to-day basis, overcome the imprint of your failures from the past and the challenges of today? What were you telling? What was your mental dialogue?
In all these cases, successful people, it's their attitude and that mindset that creates. It's the leaders who create the culture. It is thus one or a few people who rest of the people would like to follow, saying that, okay, this is the type of person that I want to become, and that's how the culture develops. Now, in terms of telling yourself, first one is you start with, hey, failure is not an option. That's how you prepare when you are going to get into a task. I want to accomplish this, I want to do this project, I just cannot fail. Failure is not an option. This is something that, again, someone like a Gene Kranz, who brought that Apollo 13 mission, what was a failure, made it a success. He was the mission director. He coined this phrase, failure is not an option. And that's the mindset that you begin with. And then in many instances, failure is inevitable, because it may not be entirely your fault. It could be so much dependent on other things that you would say failure has happened. But to accept that failure and not be bogged down by that failure is important. Particularly for entrepreneurs. For entrepreneurs, failure has happened. Oh, okay, I pick up and run and I do the same thing in a different way, or I do something else. So the fear of failure has to go away. You start with the mindset that you're not going to fail, and then you get all the resources to make sure that you succeed. Most often, when you start with that mindset, you'll succeed. In case it fails, you don't have any fear. You don't have to lose face. That fear of failure should not be there. If you capture that mindset, that fear is, if you're able to conquer that fear and manage the fear in your mind, then in my view and in my experience, things will be relatively easy.
No better way to end this. It was, I would say, one of our best ever conversations. And if you're watching, please take these words to heart. Words of wisdom from a man like this don't come easy. And this is a priceless lesson you've shared, sir, for millions of people who are going to watch this and build their businesses with this wisdom. So thank you so much for your time and for your words of wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rishikesh. I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Pleasure, sir. Thank you.